everybody, Jason Burmis here. And if you read the title of this one, I don't think it could be more accurate, because we're going to tell you a story about authoritarians coming in under the guise of caring about the safety of human beings when their actions show the complete opposite. And to illustrate that point, we're going to be speaking with Will Van Leer, and he is the owner of the Bubble Tea Company, one of which is over in the mall in Iowa where I'm at. And I'm just going to let him describe the incident that occurred start to finish, that shows you again that these people are here to put their boot on your neck, and in reality couldn't care less about human life. So Will, take it away.
Yeah, so like Jason said, I own Bubble Tea Company. At the start of this year, I had three. The first shutdown closed two of them. One was in Illinois, one was in a government building, library. The other one is in the North Park Mall here in Davenport, Iowa. Anyway, our sales have actually been much higher this year than last year, over 60%. And I attribute part of that to the fact that we do not currently, and we never will, mandate masks. Basically, if you look through history, everything starts on a slippery slope of arbitrary, nonsensical rules, and when people go along with them, bad things happen. So, I don't know what's going to happen down the road, but I know I'm not going to be a part of that chapter. Anyway, we had a Black Friday was huge for us, and basically the manager there, who's my younger brother, saw someone taking pictures of him and the other staff not wearing masks, and other people in there not wearing masks. And basically 2 days later, a health department guy comes in to do an inspection. Now, our inspections are normally happen once, maybe twice a year, and we pass them with flying colors. He comes in, he leaves a sheet of paper that's unusual because it has almost no markings on it. It has no code reference, by the way. And at the bottom it says, employees not wearing masks. And so I was like, okay, well, this guy clearly doesn't know what he's doing. About 2 weeks later, I guess he spoke with the manager. Manager's my younger brother, he believes the same way I do. And we weren't putting up with it. We just told him, you can write another piece of paper. It's not going to matter. So he sent an official letter from them stating that this is our warning and that they can suspend our health license for 7 days or permanently. So I actually called my state senator Cornier and state house rep Paulstein and spoke with them right afterward. I actually called around to the other ones too, but those were the only ones I could actually get a hold of, which that's a completely different matter, by the way. In the past, if you couldn't get a hold of someone via digital or whatever, you just literally go to their house, right? Mm-hmm. And now, because of all this lockdown nonsense and mask scare and everything like that, people are very separated from their representatives, more so than they ever have been. And I don't think people understand what that's going to look like next year. But that's a different topic. Mm-hmm. So anyway, the health department, essentially, after I spoke with my representatives, they said, they'd check into it, see what's going to happen, see what they can do, yada, yada. And then they asked me, why is it that I didn't necessarily want to, mandate the mask? And I ran into probably the biggest problem, which is everyone else out there is given a set of talking points, propaganda is what I call it, from the media on basically how we're all going to die from something that is essentially the cold. And we're supposed to go along with any measures to protect ourselves from something that kills less than 0.03% of the population or something. It's ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous. I have some background in this fight because the health department coming after me, it's a new one because I'm in business now, but I used to be heavily involved in politics. Back in 2008, I was a Ron Paul guy. Back in 2012, I actually spent some time in China in between that to learn Mandarin. And the reason why I went there was because in 2008, I saw the way the media treated Ron Paul when he ran for office. And I just said, this country's done back then, and I need to learn Chinese. So I did. I went over there, lived there for a year and a half, learned Mandarin. It's part of it is, you wish you could change things, But if it's not going to change, then you have to do what's best for you and your eventual family, because I have a family now. So I'm teaching my kids, Chinese. I also speak Hebrew and Russian. Those are my languages I did for my job when I was in the Navy. I was naval intelligence for 5 years, and that was part of my wake up when I was in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
I saw some things happening. I went in April, right before 9/11, and then after 9/11 happened, I heard some weird things that my chiefs and stuff were saying about, well, they have their excuse now, and I was like, I was a novice. I didn't know anything about politics or anything. I just knew that people were acting funny about the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So down the road, came back, went to college in Dubuque, and when I got involved with the Ron Paul campaign, I saw for the first time why a lot of people get disaffected by trying to change anything that seems much bigger than themselves. Because when you get involved in the process, I mean, what's really funny is people are upset, and they should be upset about the election right now, obviously, because, I'll tell people, I did not vote in the last cycle for the presidency, not because I disliked Trump or I liked Biden or anything like that. I just have really high standards, obviously, because I was for Ron Paul for so long. So it's really hard for me to do the whole hold the nose thing. And I didn't know which way he was going to go on a lot of things. Foreign policy, didn't see any federal agencies shuttered, defunded,
Well, when you look at
just stuff
foreign
like
policy,
that.
right? I mean, the reality is that no matter what, he cut that deal with the Saudi Arabians right away, $400+ billion. He got behind what was going on in Yemen. He gave Israel everything they wanted and more. A lot of people say he didn't start any new wars, but by, just rhetoric saying he was going to stop them, what did we get out of that? A couple weeks of him saying we were going to get out of Syria, and then you have the incident that didn't really occur in Duma, and then it's just right back to normal. So, I mean, there is a lot of talk in that administration as well. To kind of get back to the issue, though, the mask issue real quick, and then we can get into other things. For instance, I met you last night, although you'd contacted me before, at a bar. And I just want to show people that, there's no need for a new normal. This is me last night. Again, this is a separate bar, but there's no plexiglass. No one's wearing masks. There's probably 100+ people there. We met at a separate bar. I went to a third bar. There's many things. I was not shut down. Now, they tried to do it a few weeks ago. Okay. It just ended, I think, 2 weeks ago, where they were shutting everything down at 10 p.m. I would hope that at least people locally here will fight back. But it's, people don't understand this is going on in other places in the country. And the real ironic thing about, this incident with the health department and them, coming in, and we'll get to the citation in a minute, is when they come in, it's post this, terrible incident where luckily no one was hurt, but, you had a bullet hole in your store, and you think, these people are coming to check where that might have happened and that everything was okay, and go from there.
Okay, so sometimes I think, so I'm I guess a religious person. I think a lot of things don't happen by accident. And there was a shooting that happened at the North Park Mall. It was some young people that had a dispute. It started out at Hibbett's, which is right down from my store. And 2 shots were fired. One went into the leg of one of the people disputing. The other shot went into the wall of my store, and actually went through my store, went into Von Maur, into their changing room. The police later were able to collect the casing because someone literally swept it up and threw it in the trash. Or not the casing, the shell. Anyway, the point is, there's a hole in my wall, right, from this bullet hole, and it was where customers would have been seating. Now, right when that shooting happened, the manager just so happened to have closed the gate for the store because he had to go pick up some inventory in the outside of the mall from a company called Instacart, where we get items. So there was a lot of fortuitous circumstances that led to nobody being in that store during that very small amount of time when the bullet went through, right? 2 days later is when the health department guy came by for the first time. And what's ironic is, if you would have been standing there and you saw a health department guy come in, you would have thought, oh, wow, he's coming here to check to see if everything's okay. Did anybody else get hurt? Are people concerned? No. He comes in and he asks about a stupid piece of cloth on someone's face. And it gave the impression that if someone had been sitting there and they weren't wearing a mask and they'd been shot, that would have been the bigger concern. Complete nonsense. Complete nonsense. And so I obviously I wish the shooting didn't happen, but because it did, it helped to highlight just how authoritarian, nonsensical, empty-headed these bureaucrats are that are in. And this guy, his hand was shaking when he gave us the first notice, when he gave it to my brother, because I asked him, what was his demeanor? Was he arrogant? And he was like, well, at first he was. He said, why aren't you wearing a mask? And my brother, he's got a pretty strong belief, just like I do. He said, not going to happen. You're on private property, blah, blah, blah. And then his hand was shaking, handing it over. This is how they actually feel. They're cowards on the inside, and 1,000 of them will run away from one person that stands up. Now, they basically, so I've dealt with bullies from when I was a kid. I had a bully experience from 4th grade to 6th grade because I stood up for a friend of mine who was slightly overweight. People kept making fun of him. And then all of a sudden they didn't like me for it. Ironically, I have an identical twin brother, and they decided to bully him as well just because we look alike. So it didn't end until 6th grade when I finally stood up to the kid that had started the whole thing. And I only stood up to him because he started bullying my younger brother, like literally chasing us home, beating us up, that kind of stuff. Once I stood up to him, there were still 8 other bullies. They easily could have, hurt me. But once I stood up to them, it wasn't fun anymore. It wasn't easy, and they weren't getting what they wanted, which essentially was them passing on, basically family trauma to the next person, essentially. So once I stood up, I realized even with all the backup they had, it's an example is the state right now. The state is huge, If you look at like the standing, like what I call the paramilitary, which is the police, right? You've got over 1.3, 1.4 million of them in the U.S., right? Now, police are just people, obviously, but what you believe condones your actions. So when a police officer is told, hey, you need to go here and shut this business down, then the Republicans, I really feel like this year has been a year of the yo-yo effect. Republicans were basically pushed into this back up the police no matter what status because of the BLM Antifa. And then, after that, guess who's shutting down the businesses? The police. Now, they're following orders, but who's backing them up? By and large, small business owners are Republican in nature. So you have this yo-yo effect where you back the system up, this system comes for you. You can't write blank checks. There are good ones, there are bad ones. You can't write blank checks for government officials, no matter what. I mean, and that's a whole side canard because the police departments aren't actually government, they're corporations. And if anybody looks into that, you'll find their corporate charter. That's why they operate differently. That's why they operate on cost-benefit analysis, not the way the sheriff's departments do. And that's why it's a whole different ballgame.
Well, the sheriffs, it depends on what part of the sheriff's department, but traditionally your sheriffs are obviously elected officials. But now, like in New York, for instance, they're utilizing deputies, basically just hired bureaucrats like this to go after small businesses like Mac's Pub because the NYPD has refused to do it. The actual sheriff department doesn't want any part of it. And even the state troopers don't want their name on that going after small businesses. Now, obviously, they've come after Iowa in certain cases, but the authoritarianism that we're seeing in New York, in California, if Joe Biden gets in my opinion, they're going to try to spread it. They are going to try to shut this country down. Bill Gates has arrogantly said that bars and restaurants will be closed to 4 to 6 months based on zero scientific evidence whatsoever. As a small businessman and an entrepreneur, not only how does that make you feel, and how can we rally others like yourself, not only in this state, but across the country to resist this tyranny?
Well, it in some ways it makes me grateful for living in Iowa versus obviously California or New York, And in other ways, it reminds me of an analogy of a vice, On both sides of a vice, you have the hardest objects, and then you put pressure and you squeeze the middle. Right now in the U.S., the coast, they're getting hit the hardest with the tyranny, essentially. And then they're kind of starting to try to squeeze the rest of the area. if people look back in history, one of the things about resisting and what we can do now is the first thing you can do is look at states that are not as authoritarian and figure out why. One of the reasons why Iowa is not, well, first of all, Iowa's motto is pretty good. Our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain. That's literally our state's motto, right? I mean, that and New Hampshire, they're the top two, in my opinion. Live free or die. So our state motto has a lot to do with the innate concept behind a lot of people pushing or not pushing something. Also, in the political arena, we sent Ron Paul delegates, the entire slate of Ron Paul delegates, to the National Convention in 2012, right? We're one of the few states that did that. That has a ripple effect down the road to where we're still resisting. People that are in office remember what we did. We essentially took over the party leadership. Those that were older really disliked what we did because they thought they saw us as young newcomers that were too idealistic and didn't know what we were doing. What's ironic is they they claimed we were part of a conspiracy to take over, and it's like, okay, whatever. We're just trying to save you from yourselves and give you the power back to yourselves so you can make your own decisions. Nice, Libertarians trying to take over the world and leave you alone. That's essentially what it was.
Even that movement has been largely co-opted, in my opinion, that libertarian movement, just in the sense that a lot of them fell into, MAGA hopium. And, they got onto these message boards and, you would take some things that were factual that had been around for years and morph them into this idea that somehow Guantanamo Bay is a good place and that's where we're taking down the deep state. And
oh, my gosh, you're so right.
Guys like, and it really was. And a lot of people don't want to have that come to Jesus moment that they've been played.
Yep.
They're still, looking at that. So, as a guy who's built this, as a guy who's seen, the inside of military intelligence, what are your opinions of guys like, Rand Paul, Ron Son, even Mike Lee that are somewhat small government, anti-war, Tulsi Gabbard, for instance, on the other end of the spectrum? I still think all of these people have their problems. Gabbard, CFR, Rand Paul, not especially as adamant as his father, but really the best we have. And, Mike Lee, there's a ton of problems with guys like him. There's a ton of problems with guys like Ted Cruz, that act like they're speaking out against big tech. So what is your overall, assessment of our political situation and the shards of that libertarian movement that still are anti-war, pro-freedom, accountability, and those issues?
Yeah, so having run for office myself, I ran for U.S. Congress back in 2012 or 2010, and I ran for state senate 2012. I actually won the primary in 2012 for the state senate. But having done that and seeing that, for me, it was about the message, because when you run for an office, and this is for people that feel frustrated, right? When you run for an office and you get on the ballot, you have a platform no matter what. You can host your own events. You can go to events. The mainstream has to essentially host debates, whether they like you or not. And you can get your point across to many more people that otherwise, like, for example, the people that tune into your show are probably more informed than the average person, to be, upfront. But the average person does pay attention a bit more to debates, because on the woke-o-meter, they're probably around maybe 2%. If somebody gets into a debate and knows a lot more information, they can, I could put out 20, 30% more information to somebody that would get almost nothing. So going to run for an office, even a local one, does help, not in the sense of winning it to gain power, but it helps because you wake people up. As a matter of fact, I don't remember the name of the gentleman last night, but one of your friends came up to me to say he was glad to meet me, and that he was a supporter of mine when I ran for Congress. He was the guy that was right next to us in that bar there. And I found that, I've had that happen before. For running for Congress, you have a lot of people that you don't know because, you're debating and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he was probably already woke back when, it's funny. I don't like using the word woke.
I
'cause it's
won't
kind of
even do it. I won't do red
Yeah.
pill. I won't do truther. I won't do woke
Yeah.
because I'm none of those things. I tell people, I go, listen, man, I look for the truth. I realize I'm a human being. I'm going to make mistakes. I will admit those mistakes when they're out there. But I try to inform myself with as much raw information and then use discernment to, put out what I think, is at least the most factual in the situation. You know what I mean? And I think that's how we all have to be and to have the ability to have conversations with others that seem to refuse to have those conversations. Find a way that you can find a point of agreement. You catch more bears with honey, right? Than you do with vinegar or salt. So why not start where we can have a conversation and then flesh that out? That's usually my Jedi mind trick, if I can even get there. Because now, the woke people, these young people, they just want to yell at you and tell you they're right and, be a victim and say they deserve this and that. I mean, you're probably around my age. I'm early 40s. What's your assessment of that? Do you agree that we've now come into that culture where people don't even want to listen?
Yeah, it's, in the past, you could hide your opinions behind your eyes. And now your opinion is on your face. If you wear a mask, especially voluntarily, you're saying a pretty strong statement. If you don't, especially when it's mandatory, you're also saying a very strong statement. The younger generation maybe for the last 20 years, they haven't really had to challenge themselves in ways that were uncomfortable. And I believe that this next year, I actually made a 30-day time capsule on my Facebook page on January 21st because, on the 21st of this month for January 21st, because I believe January 21st, everything is going to be so much different by that date than than the changes that happened this year. And there's some indicators that I've seen. I'll give you an example. Right now, the majority, 70+% of Republicans, not only do not trust that the election was fair, they essentially don't trust elections going forward. Up to 40% of Democrats have questioned it as well. So you're talking about a nation in basically governance crisis, if you look at it from a certain viewpoint, where they no matter what happens, they're not going to trust elections run the way they're currently run. Let's say Trump stays in office. Okay, well, you know what's going to happen. People are going to freak out. You're going to have BLM and Antifa on the streets, and you're going to have basically the dry run, which was last summer, go into full effect. If Trump leaves, which would probably happen on the 20th, if it were to happen, that's just as problematic because the Republican base will not accept what Biden, his administration, and basically any rules that come out of that whole Congress, it's just all going to be null and void at that point. I have a personal feeling on it, and I didn't vote for either of them, so I don't have a dog in this fight. And hey, what's cool? We can look back on this and see whether I'm right or not. I don't think Trump's leaving. I think the 6th, they're going to raise some issues. Pence may just try to ignore it or squash it. The 20th, there will be an online inauguration for Biden because he said he's not going to do one in person. And they're building the inauguration set, as a lot of people already know, and that's for Trump. He's going to re-inaugurate. He's going to stay. Now, what happens after that, I don't know. I have some suspicions. Biden could form what's called a government in exile and try to do it from somewhere else. I would think somewhere like San Francisco or whatever. I know it sounds far-fetched, but if you look at the way the U.S. has done this, we've done the very thing that's happening to us to multiple countries over the years. A lot of this is like coming home to roost stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The GOP screwed people over in the primaries for decades. I was a part of seeing that. When I became a national delegate, which me, and it wasn't just me, a lot of people put a lot of hard work to make that happen. We had to fight tooth and nail. We had to fight dirty tricks. We had to fight fraud. Matter of fact, during the caucuses, there was straight up fraud that we were privy to. I'll give you one example. I was a precinct captain, and it was in Dubuque Senior High School in Dubuque, where they were counting a lot of the votes, right? Now, what happens is you vote in a precinct, the captain takes the votes personally to where they're being counted and oversees the counting. So everybody can see it. They're all paper ballots. It's no electronic stuff. That's how the caucuses are run. There was a lady who was probably in her late 30s, blonde, going around room to room saying that she was going to collect the ballots for everyone and take them herself. Now, obviously, I was like, you're not touching our ballots, you know, but she had in her hands stacks of basically these manila envelopes that had the ballots in them. And I was like, where did she get those from? We get up there, we're counting. The person that was the head counter for the whole thing basically was like, we're missing close to half of the precincts. Anybody know where they are? And I was like, yeah, I saw some lady running around with them. She comes in 30 minutes later because everybody's looking for her. And she's like, oh, here they are. She looks kind of nervous, a little bit disheveled. Ballots are messed up. They're pristine. They are unusually for Romney. I mean, it was just nonsense. We look at it and it was like, so everybody started checking the bathrooms to see if like she had dumped them somewhere, you know, see what the heck happened. But even before we got to counting hers, the ones that she brought in, which was roughly half, right? CNN was reporting the results from Dubuque County. We hadn't even reported them to Des Moines. And that's when even she looked at, because we had a monitor, even she, this stealing, immoral person, looked at the monitor and was like, whoa, like, because she was like a little thief. And then she saw the big thieves. And it was like, wow. And we looked at that, and I remember a guy saying to me, should we continue counting? And I'm like, yeah, we're going to keep counting. I'm going to find out what's going on here.
Well, listen, man.
We had no...
I mean, the technology existed then, and it exists today where we could have... I mean, again, nothing is foolproof. You're an intelligence. There could be corruption anywhere. But if we wanted to, I mean, literally, you could take it. You could have everybody come and vote. Everything could be live streamed. We're talking paper ballots right there going into a machine. They could be taken, again, out on a live stream, in camera, all of these places. And then as people check them, each table could, again, live stream just for the fact that you would have the actual record of the vote as they take it and put it underneath. In fact, you could take that hand tally, and there are actually programs that identify Pokemon cards, for Christ's sake, that literally do. How hard would it be to write that and then put them against that right there? You would have a paper record, a digital record, and then a video record of everything everywhere. And that would be it. That would be very hard to game. That would be very hard to game. But you know what? They've never put that in there because, again, you've worked in intelligence, is because they've utilized these systems long before Dominion, with Diebold and others, to rig elections not only abroad and in other countries where they're utilized, but yes, here. Bev Harris, black box voting, even Greg Palast, who I put on the spot prior to the election, who's, Johnny Nonsense, didn't come true, by the way. None of his, and that's a shame because I had a lot of respect for Greg, and I still do, in those, days when he was railing against the Bush administration and what was going on there. But you saw what he said, and his scenarios, none of them came true. And he put out a book, How Trump Stole the 2020 Election, 6 months before the election. So, I mean, come on. It's a bizarre world. And, would you agree with that assessment that, these elections have been gamed for a very long time, and just one of those tools, as you saw, there was literally hand ballot stuffing and corruption there, but through these digital machines as well.
Yeah, so what I find interesting is right now, hopefully this can be a good reflective tool to be used on people like myself and others that have been through the process. Now, I saw it firsthand, but there's others that are in GOP leadership or party leadership of either party, and they're scratching their heads, and they're like, why did this happen? Why is it happening? And what's going to happen in the future? Well, they need to look at the fact that we've used these in the way that we have, and it's like a fire. You can't use stuff and not get burned. We've been doing it to other countries. We've been doing it for a long time. Guess what? They got us. So now what are we going to do? Are we going to continue to use it against other countries? We continue to allow it to be used in CONUS here on people that we think are a little too fringy, that are going to push a little too hard on the envelope. There are people that I still consider friends. They're part of certain communities, like former intelligence community and stuff. And a lot of them, they're nice people. They think that the system has flaws, but inherently it's going to do the right thing at the end of the day. I think now it's clear that that's not really the case when it comes to the macro sense. Like, the point of it is to override people's own sensibilities, their own sense of survival, their own sense of what is right, what is wrong, and to inculcate them into something that they never would have agreed to had they not compromised themselves prior. And a lot of these systems right now, what we're seeing, here's an example. People have wondered, why is it that the shots are going to the healthcare workers first? Now, some people say, oh, because they're front line, yada, yada. I think it's much different than that. They compromised themselves when they lied, or they allowed the lies to happen about what was actually happening. When you compromise yourself, you open yourself up to some very bad things. That caused what's happening to be happening. People are starting to see the videos where, somebody's fainting, someone's passing out. You look at the numbers, upward of at least 3% are having major, severe reactions, where it says severe as in they can't go to work, they can't feed themselves, or they require medical attention, meaning hospitalization.
Well,
3% is,
I've gone over that, and in the first 4 days of shots, it came out to about 2.7%. And this was something I was actually saving for another video that I was going to do later today. No, but since you're here, and just because again we do it live and we do it real, I want to show you this because literally right before you got at me, I put this on Facebook because somebody had sent me the link from Parler. Now, again, I'm all for alternative platforms. I'm not on Parler in particular. So I ripped this video, and I'm going to tell you right now, this video is going to be hard to watch. And if you have any semblance of sanity, and if you have any heart left after all this, I'm warning you right now that by the end of it, you might tear up a little, because this is a health worker that was somebody who did take that first round of shots. And remember, it's very important that they want you for a second one. We've gone over all this stuff. We're going to be going over more of it today, especially because it looks like they're going to really push for that mandate they've been talking about in New York since the summer. But please, listen to this young woman who's a healthcare worker.
Hi, I am a registered nurse in Nashville, Tennessee, and my name is Kalila Mitchell. I'm reaching out to everyone about the COVID-19 vaccination. I recently took the COVID-19 vaccination. After the shot, I felt fine, but within 3 days, I went to the doctor because I had problems with my face. The whole left side of my face, actually. I have Bell palsy now. And as you can see, I can't smile. I'm trying to smile. I'm just kind of embarrassing for me. But I just want everyone to know that I think this vaccination is the worst thing ever. And I would not give this to anybody, even my worst enemy. Please, America, they do not care about us. Do not take this vaccination.
So there you go, man. This one's today, and I already played. I mean, we were going to play more videos than that today about other medical workers because over a week ago, we had this, and this woman had to take EpiPens twice. She had no previous conditions. She also was a different healthcare worker than the one that you just saw. I hate to end it on something so upsetting and depressing, but hopefully it's poignant to everything we've been talking about from the very beginning of this broadcast, that these people do not give a fuck about you. They do not give a fuck about you, your health, anything else. Now is the time to stand up. That's what the Great Resistance is. We covered a lot of issues here, Will. Why don't you tell people, end it on what you want to stick with folks, and then let people know how they can find more of you and support you as a small business person, and how they can support themselves and continue to fight what's coming. Because like you said, January 21st could look very different.
Yeah. So that was pretty heavy. I'm going to try to end it on a positive note. Maybe not. I'll try to stay away from the George Carlin. But basically, the best thing you can do, in my opinion, is to, because I'm a religious person, so I believe in God, and I believe that that is the only real solution. That's the only thing that's really going to help anything. There's no magic person that's going to sit in the White House and make everything better, no matter who it is. And that's something that we shouldn't be wrapped up in. Now, granted, when bad things happen, you need to point it out, try to make it right, things like that. But focus on your relationship. And this, again, this is just me talking. I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, and I think that is the number one thing. Anything outside of that is fluff, because we're all going to die anyway. When it comes to business, I have a business Facebook page, I have a business web page, all that stuff. But I'm not too concerned about that for myself. Whether they shut me down, try to shut me down, I'm not concerned at all. I've made my money, I've done my time. I've got God in my corner. That's not my concern. I just want people, if they want to do more, if they want to help, then people like yourself that actually are a voice, do what they can to promote your whatever you've got there. If you have products, if you have anything, to promote it, because there's so few voices left, and the room is getting quiet. So people like yourself and others, I don't know how much time you have, to be honest, before it gets really dark.
Well, I got to agree, man. We've been demonetized now on this channel 8.5 months. I've had it for 13 plus years. There's 1,700 plus videos. I have absolutely zero content strikes because I'm not a bully. I don't put out disinformation. My content, even the content you just saw, they may not like it, but is it really inappropriate to show a nurse that developed Bell's palsy? So if folks can support me, we got the GoFundMe. We do it monthly, $5, $10, $15. It means the world to me. There was a point 3 months ago where my GoFundMes were under review, because people like Dan Dix and others had been shut down, and I wasn't sure if I was going to use this platform. But so far, so good, because again, what am I doing other than warning people? So while we are on this platform, thumbs it up, subscribe, share. We're 60,000 plus strong on this. Let's get it to 75, 100,000. Again, I'm going to fight tooth and nail to remain on these platforms that are the new technopolies. Again, YouTube, second largest search engine under the first largest search engine of Google, the first largest video streaming platform in the world, the largest operating system under Android. They're in bed with NASA, not because they're going to the moon or Mars, because they're in AI and quantum computing. Give me a break. So I'm going kicking and screaming. If they ever take me down, I'm going to the offices. You better believe it. Check out all the documentary films for free. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture. They're free right here, right now. And guys, if you're not rockfitting, what are you waiting for? We do it live and free there Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. This is the alternate platform. We're 9,000 plus strong there. We've converted almost 1 in 6 of you over. Now, if I do get deplatformed, this is where you can find me. If you do go with the premium subscription, you get all the other creators as well. It's $9.99 a month. It's a steal. People like Whitney Webb are on there. Jimmy Dore, the Convo Couch. It's a growing platform. We all know crypto is exploding as the dollar is diminishing. So get in now and check out that platform as well. Will, this was very, very fun. I really appreciate you coming on. We will have to do it in the near future. And again, we'll have to go get a beer because guess what, guys? Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Normal. I know I look concerned, but that's just because I'm so damn surprised that I was able to actually go somewhere without a mask on my face and plexiglass and a bunch of people acting like we're not human beings and can still have fun. So, Will, again, thank you very much, my brother, and we will do it again soon, all right?
For sure, Jason.
All right, that was a fun one, guys. Will Van Leer, everybody. Again, on the way out, thumbs it up, subscribe, share. I love you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed that conversation because it really went over a lot of the different microcosms of what's going on in the bigger macrocosm of this COVID-19 84. I love you guys. It's not about left or right. It's about right and wrong. And I will see you all on the flip side.